And ultimately, where all your hard work is going to, you are building, you know, bells and toys and whistles that support the secret space program. And that money is going off planet as well as underground, in underground bases that you will never have access to. So this is a cause, a very important cause to be aware of. These are just, you know, the advantages that they have. Obviously, they've been doing, we're talking about Paperclip, Project Paperclip, the Nazis, and even before that. Basically, the technology the ETs had given humans, and this is their sort of carrot. It's kind of like the carrot and the stick. And as you sort of listen to all the stuff that you'll see on Project Camelot, when you get to the Mark Richards interviews, which are basically me recalling my conversations with him in as much depth as possible, immediately after I've interviewed him in the case of the first one, in prison, where I've sat closer than I am to this gentleman right now and stared at him for 2, and the second time, 4 hours, peppering the guy with questions, absolutely nonstop. And most of you will be aware that I'm very kind of point blank and relentless. It's part of my interview style. And this man does not blink an eye, just coming forward with information. No hesitancy, no, you know, no misdirects, no bullshit. The fact is that he is being allowed to do that, but why? And that gets to do with disclosure of a kind, because we have a war going on in these secret sort of, you know, agencies in the top levels of the British government to do with, you know, what the Queen, etc., the Parliament, and all of the players to do with the Rothschilds, you name it, and the various ET races that they are being supported by, that they are trading and doing certain things in exchange for technology, and they're still doing it. It didn't just happen once at Roswell. It's been going on nonstop since then. I can tell you that we've been told that the United States will basically fly out and recover any crashed UFO around the world and bargain with the government in whatever country it crashes in so that they can cordon off that site and take control of the technology. And the United States and Russia and China are always sort of neck and neck fighting over getting their hands on new technology, because this is how they maintain their control over the planet. It is a fascinating story in reality. And okay, there's so many things. You know, the ETs and this, you know, the SHAPE headquarters, Bob Dean, for those of you who don't know, Command Sergeant Robert O. Dean, he broke his security oath. He came forward years ago, even before I interviewed him. He was out on the circuit. He was very angry. He felt people had a right to know. And they did not interfere with him, at least overtly. They basically let him do what he was doing. And he basically is coming forward, telling a lot of the secrets about the ET interaction. Although it's interesting when you watch the Camelot videos, because you see, if you pay close attention, a progression. You see a progression of disclosure and information, and the whole story starts to build. And what has become most evident to me lately is just how many races are really visiting here and how deep this rabbit hole really goes. As I said, involving time travel, involving what we're talking about, dark star energy, which is something that Mark Richards talked about, which makes it possible for them to go interstellar with their spacecraft and puts them on the same level with certain major races out there who have space travel, like the reptilians and the raptors and others. So it's important to understand that you are part of this growing knowledge base, and what you carry around inside you once you've learned this stuff is almost, it's impossible to unlearn. It's always going to be part of you. And your chemistry will change as a result. If you want some information about, you know, Jim Mars and Joseph Farrell are kind of the experts on the Nazi sort of origination, the history of the Nazis, the fact that America is now a Fourth Reich, that we've been taken over by the paperclip, you know, the original Nazis that came over with paperclip, financed by the Bushes. You know, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about something that has been growing for some time. We're talking about a takeover of the United States. The last real president who really was for the people, obviously, was President Kennedy. There's lots of evidence that he was taken down, not just because he was going to do, you know, go into the CIA and close it down, and he was also going to dealing with creating a no currency, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is that he knew what was really going on the planet and became a threat because of that. So this is really what we're talking about. There's more. Wernher von Braun, the time travel story, that's the one I was telling you about that I spoke about. The bottom line is that that was a young man who came to me and talked about how he seems to be part of a club, and that he came across an individual that ended up to be Wernher von Braun, but he was a young version of him. And that this is what, has anyone seen the television show Fringe? Fringe. It's a hit TV show from the United States. It's over here now. I think you can get it on Netflix for one thing, and other places, I think, here in Britain. But at any rate, that, you know, they're always seeding all of the, what's going on is being seeded into movies and television, etc. Because on a certain level, they want to educate you. But it's very much sort of the Illuminati perspective of that. In other words, if you're too dumb to get it, if you're too dumb to pick up on it and understand what's really going on, you don't deserve to live. That's actually how they think about it. So this is why they seed stuff out there. It's one of the reasons. The other reason is more occult reason. They need to tell you before they're going to do something so that it will take hold, so that it will take, it's a magical act, and so that it will have roots and take hold in reality. So this is really what we're talking about. Some of the technology came from the Fourth Reich, or Third Reich, I mean. And also, it appears that Tesla was in touch with an ET race who seeded him some information. Now, what I understand after all these years of listening to these stories and learning about this from various angles is that they give humans technology as sort of, like I said, a carrot. In other words, to draw you along. And then what they do is they ask for something in return. And what no one is telling you, almost all of our witnesses are not telling you, although some of them must know, is that what they traded for technology, especially in the early days, was humans. And that's real. You have to understand, I mean, if you listen to Mark Richards, I mean, this man has got no reason to lie. None. He's been in prison for 7 years, I mean, for 30 years. He's simply not having any reason for fame and fortune or any of that. In fact, when I asked him recently, because I was really, I scanned one of his letters and I put it on my site, and he wanted me to cross out the address because he's worried that people will write to him, the prison guards will take too much notice, and that maybe he, you know, some of his privileges or whatever, because he is a captain in the military who is being safeguarded to some degree in prison, he's afraid that they will crack down on him. So, I mean, we're really talking about a very interesting scenario going on here on Earth. Now, when I say they traded humans, I'm also told, and I was revealing this in my recall of the information I got from Mark, it was about what are called raiding parties for taking humans, especially human females, off the planet, and I guess some children, that they take them to you know, other planets and so on and so forth, but that the raptors, I was told, had rescued something like 100,000 humans, something crazy, and that they relocated them to 2 terraformed planets, 2 moons outside our solar system, and that they weren't able to bring them back here because they would talk. That at some point, what Mark said was a certain percentage of those who came back would talk. So they simply weren't taking the chance. The other thing is that they have to also not disclose where those moons are in this other system. Otherwise, they will be threatened by being, kidnapped again. And this does also relate to Dulce. I was told that Mark and his father raided Dulce. And there's also a testimony on my site. There was part of the citizens' hearing for disclosure that talked about, it's a CIA agent who was almost on his deathbed. It was his testimony. It was released at the citizens' hearing on disclosure. He was talking about basically them going on a raid in Dulce. You've got another testimony from Phil Schneider. These are completely different, unrelated individuals, talking about the raid on Dulce to rescue humans that were being experimented on. What Mark said that was so heart-wrenching, I guess you could call it, was that even after they rescued the humans, that some of them would just, the Greys would go abduct them again. This was the tragedy. And that stuck in my mind. I thought that's really interesting. So you go to all this trouble, and then, that because of technology, these beings are able to interfere with us. So this is kind of what we're talking about. We're talking about Majestic 12, Truman, Scion, the committee. Majestic 12 is another name for it. These are some of the players.
Kerry, do they want us for our genetic codes? Is that what they are?
They want us for many reasons, and I do list them. Actually, if you watch the second Mark Richards interview, you can go on my website. You will see that there's documentation that accompanies it. We were allowed to have a pencil this time, and so his wife was there with me. She took notes while I asked the questions. It turns out that my recall and her notes did jive actually very, very well, so she did a great job of taking notes. And basically, I list all the reasons why they want humans on that document that's on my website. But generally speaking, yes, it's the genetics. Apparently, especially, they want human females because they want to create hybrids. And human females are apparently very good breeders, for lack of a better word, if you want to try to enter this, get into this sort of 3D, latter 3D kind of planet, and you want your DNA, your sort of boots on the ground, to manifest here. So this is what they use. They use them as breeders. That's what I was told. There is, of course, the side that also you're talking about fluids, that hormones. This is the kind of thing that Greys and reptilians live on. They live off our sexual kundalini energy. This is a reality. This has actually been documented over and over again. That's not news. Okay. Laura Eisenhower, some of you will know she's on the circuit. I believe the granddaughter of Eisenhower. I'm sure that he knew a great deal more than he was able to reveal. As I mentioned, the octopus, this is just some of the background on that. Promise software, by the way, is key. There is an artificial intelligence, actually a development of artificial intelligence, as you may know, on this planet. There's also a network of artificially intelligent nanosatellites that now surrounds the planet and reports to a larger sort of spaceship, I guess, artificial intelligence called Mother. And I not only got that information, which relates to Skynet, from Pete Peterson, but we also got it from Anthony Sanchez, who got it from Lockheed Martin scientists who were on the run. And he had no idea, had never seen our Pete Peterson interview. So these Lockheed Martin scientists apparently built the nanosatellites, and they contacted Anthony Sanchez because Anthony wrote a book called UFO Highway, where he interviewed a person called the Colonel, who was a whistleblower. But Anthony's background is as a software developer. And so these sort of Silicon Valley, from what I understand, Lockheed Martin scientists trusted that Anthony would understand what they were talking about, so they contacted him to tell him their story. Anthony has had multiple death threats, and I mean one right after the other. He's quite, he kind of, these people, you know, when you get a lot of death threats, you kind of become sort of paranoid with a good reason, right? And he has a family that he loves, but he has to be very careful. I can tell you that what happened with the Lockheed Martin scientists is that they decided to do a test to find out what were the chances of these artificially intelligent nanosatellites turning on humans. And the information came back that it was something like 60%. And they all, I guess they started not wanting to do the job. And they started disappearing. They started, I guess, being knocked off. And so these, a couple of them went on the run. For all I know, they're still on the run, assuming they haven't been caught. But they did take the time to tell Anthony their story. And this is a book that he's going to be releasing called Project Leonid. And Project Leonid is absolutely key information. And I can also tell you, as I said, that this information came through via Pete Peterson. It was part of the information he said that I would be killed for revealing, related to Terminator. And the fact that this is a Terminator scenario that we're living in with something called Skynet. And Skynet is very real as well. So this is what's going on. Now you might want to know what is their modus operandi, what is their final goal. What they want is humanity 3.0. This is what the secret space program, besides going out and terraforming other planets and wanting to dominate other races because they believe it's a dog-eat-dog, you know, multiverse, so to speak. And they can only do that with technology. So they think if they trade a few humans in exchange for technology that saves the planet, that it's collateral damage, and therefore it's okay to do so. But that's how the dark side thinks. But the bottom line is that they are working on getting rid of the sort of humanity 2.0 and going to humanity 3.0. So they're constantly looking at your children, and they're looking at taking your children and modifying them. And they are looking at watching them, you know, they trace them through school and deciding what their bloodlines are and which ones will fit into what programs. And they're also using you when you're sleeping in the astral. The Greys have taught them how to do this. And this is something that they are doing. There's a woman who interviewed her husband, sort of a very long-term interview, going, I guess, months and months, but it's available on the internet. It's called the Mars Records, and you can get it. Stephanie Relf is the person who interviewed her husband. Fascinating dialogue between her and her husband. Her husband felt and kept saying that he was having dreams repeatedly of living and working on Mars, and then he would wake up here. And Duncan O'Finian claimed the same thing, by the way, in case that's a super soldier. There are others. I can tell you that Mars factors in a big way into the secret space program. There are many bases on Mars, and that's been verified by countless witnesses, as well as the moon. So let's see. The other thing is that the nano that's put into the chemtrails, and you here in England are being inundated by chemtrails. There are some apparently semi-positive things that chemtrails do, but I can guarantee you that they are also, and they've been tested now by countless scientists, they contain a lot of things that are to break down your immune system in case they decide they want to have an epidemic of some kind of designer bioweapon, and get rid of a large number population that way. And for that, I also reference what's called the Iron Mountain Report that Henry Deacon talked about, that's available on the web, as well as the Georgia Guidestones, which say they want to have about 500 million tops population here on the Earth, ideally speaking. Arthur C. Clarke, sorry?
I was going to say, how are they protecting themselves against the chemtrails?
Well, we don't really know. I can tell you that there are things you can take. Actually, there are things you can protect yourself using things like nanos, like silver. MMS is another thing There are various, remedies that are out. People are starting to get hip to all the sort of elements that are in the chemtrails, and they're starting to put out products to help you deal with that and to wash these things out of your system. As far as, the actual nano that is basically creating us into a kind of super soldier race. This is what Mark Richards also did say, and he became rather nervous, I think, over that disclosure. But the bottom line saying what they really want are sort of a super soldier race of beings that will take orders, be docile. So in other words, do what they're told, but actually be very, very strong, be augmented. In other words, they want to augment this human body for space travel, etc. I mean, there's so many things that are seeded out there that do document this and actually verify it for all intents and purposes. One of the things that I found very interesting is this kids game called Halo. I don't know if any of you are aware of it or have played it or read the books or seen the movies, but that's actually all about super soldiers and all about why they're creating super soldiers to deal with the various races out there, etc. This is how they think. They are worried about invasion races. They may be worried with good reason. However, there are many positive beings as well. So we're really in a multiverse, and you are protected by, on the one side, this is why we're still here. This is why, against all odds, you may see it say that humanity is actually moving faster than they can control you. And the way I substantiate that is to tell you that look at the way they treat you. In Britain, I have to say that Britain actually wins the prize. I think that this society is the most controlled society, coming from America as I do, but also having traveled the world. I can say that I'm just amazed at what goes on here. But the bottom line is that they wouldn't go to all this trouble. One second. They wouldn't go to all this trouble, and they wouldn't constantly be feeding this stuff. They don't just do chemtrails once. They don't just apply, bad food, bad air, bad this, bad water, and then be done with it. They don't just put you through school once and say, throw away the key and you're fine, you're cattle. No. They have to keep doing it. It has to be your television every day. It has to be your fluorescent lights. It has to be your food and water every day. And they have to keep talking to you on the television and through all the different media to program you over and over and over again, because what they found is programming breaks down. Because this human instrument is so miraculous that we are ultimately beating them at their own game. There's reasons for that we have help as well. But nonetheless, this is what's happening. The mind control, I see it in the newspapers. I see it in the, the cameras on the street corners. I see it, it's just amazing. I see it in, because my boyfriend tells me the laws, certain laws that just amaze me, that just amazing laws, like you can't pick up a child from one place and take them to another place is actually against the law for parents, and that they're trying to take away the control that parents have, that they have to force them kids to go to school, and they can't homeschool their own kids, and you can't have certain herbs here, and it's just I don't know, it's just a huge list, and it blows my mind. Now I know I'm in a police state because I live in America, and it's getting worse and worse there, but I'm just saying that you guys, as far as I can tell, in the general populace, as far as being controlled, you take the cake. Now, one thing I do as Camelot is I do wait for 1, 2, 3 testimonies on certain subjects, and I just reserve judgment. If I get information, I put it out there. It doesn't mean I agree with it, but I try to put it out there anyway. But I don't actually, until I get someone who comes forward, or more than one person who can substantiate what they've got to say, who is a straight up individual, et cetera, because you have to understand that we have so many crazies out there, and a lot of them are sort of attracted to Camelot, you will say. Now, my point of view, let me say this, in terms of when I say crazy, in a certain sense, you're crazy if you're not crazy right now, because this world we live in is so upside down, that if you are fine with all of it, then you are crazy, okay? And you're a Nazi. I mean, I'm sorry, you know, and you're probably an Illuminati, and it's your bloodline, and et cetera. I mean, you know, that's the bottom line. So when somebody comes to me and they act completely like wacko, or they're very nervous, or their eyes don't focus, or they, you know, they have all these problems or health problems, which they usually do, I actually listen to them. And I will spend more time listening to people that other people will judge outright as being crazy, because I believe that sometimes the craziest people will know the truth about something. And that if we just ignore all our crazy people, we're going to be in real trouble. Because this world is gone crazy, you know. So those people are simply exhibiting the signs of health, because they're awakening and they're embodying the craziness. You know what I'm saying? That's the first step towards getting healed, is when the sickness really manifests in a physical way. So, oh, by the way, they're always battling over stargates. This is major, major, major. So not only do they battle over technology, but stargates. And I can tell you that Crimea and Iran and Syria and all of this, it is about technology. It is about ancient technology that's embedded in some of these places. It is about the stargates, the portals that let beings in, that allow us to go interstellar, etc. So this is, beings are definitely battling over that. So that's what we've got when it comes to war. Very important to keep in mind.
Is there any light at the end of this tunnel?
Yeah, we are the light. You really are the light. I mean, now this is, you know, I have so much stuff. I mean, these are our whistleblowers. This goes on. I've got a list basically of all the projects, the black projects. The Hadron Collider, listen to my Simon Parkes interview and what he says about the Hadron Collider. It is significant that he says it's been relocated or basically being built in Japan, and that they are, through blackmail, being forced to build it there in an earthquake zone. That is significant and may factor in the future of our world. Okay.
Just go back
This kind of sums it up, so just so you kind of get a crescendo. I can tell you that that because of Kundalini energy and activating your chakras and raising your vibration through your DNA activation, because all this knowledge, strange as it may sound, when you become more awakened, your DNA starts to awaken, and that so-called junk DNA starts to activate. So you really are like, you are a vessel, you are carrying around this information. We are a library, a genetic library. And so you basically are not controllable. They would not have to use artificial intelligence to try to track and trace what you're going to do, to use predictive programming if they knew what you were going to do. They would have been done a long time ago. They're still trying to figure you out. They just don't have it down. And they don't understand women. So believe me, you know, the key is in the women. Okay, so this is, you know, you are hybrids. This is your salvation. It's who you are. It's the fact that you do have a trajectory. It's the fact that we do have truth tellers. People like me that will risk our lives. There are many of them out there. They're doing it every day. Some of them may be in the audience. The white hats that work in the military, the people that are behind the scenes, that are risking their lives and still have to work for the man, but they're getting information out, seeding it out. The people that are keeping people like Mark Richards alive. These are your signs of hope, and the whistleblowers. So please do support whistleblowers. Okay, now if you want to ask questions, go ahead.
Kerry, is there a link between Morgellon disease and chemtrails?
Yes. I don't know the specific link. I know that they're tracing it to, scientists are. And let me see if I can remember this guy's name. He's an excellent scientist, and he's done a tremendous amount of work in this area. It'll come to me. Bottom line is, Morgellons is you're seeing fibers that are being put into your skin from what I understand. This is nano. This is trying to change what you are made of, in essence, the human body. That's what's happening. And the people that rebel, their physiology can't accept the nano. It's having trouble processing it. The ones that are sort of having this disease and manifesting it are simply fighting it.
Because there's no cure for it.
Well, whether there's a cure, I don't know. See, the one thing that I do notice is they don't stop the chemtrails, and they do them constantly. And so what happens is you have to say, well, if this was something they could do once and they'd be done, then, you know, it'd be very powerful. But if they have to keep doing it over and over again, you know, this is what's interesting. It's like when Duncan O'Finian, at the age of 50, started getting his memories back as a super soldier. You know, this is what happens. They cannot seem to keep us down. Even the physiology, by the way, you heard Dan Burish talking about entering this particular part of the galaxy and how the energetics are coming in. You heard David Wilcock talk about the same thing. This is all supporting you. I don't know if you've noticed, but old people don't look as old as they used to. This is true. This is not, this is no fantasy. You can cure yourself. We are tapping into our abilities to cure our own human body of any disease, including, you know, cancer, et cetera, and whatever else they try to sell you on the television, which I urge you not to listen to. You know, that's the bottom line.
How many races are actually helping us? Do you know the name of them?
How many?
Races are helping.
Well, I don't know how many. You know, I don't even know how many are here. We get different numbers. Clifford Stone said something like 54. You know, other people are saying, you know, over, 200. Some people are saying thousands. You know, I can say that.
Is there more helpers than what there are people trying to do us down?
Are there more help?
Helpers.
Okay, well, there are some people, I know David Wilcock is fond of saying, you know, that most of them are service to others rather than what we call service to self, which are the negative beings. But I'm not so sure about that. I mean, I can say that if you have a few foes out there, and they are pretty powerful, like reptilians and a few others, then I would say you seem to sort of be on the lookout anyway. The fact that they have managed to abduct so many humans, and this is, you know, I mean, it's really hard to find somebody nowadays they haven't abducted, to be honest with you, on some level. You know, that doesn't mean it's always a negative abduction. I mean, you're having positive contact all the time. I do encourage people when I lecture to read the Ashiana Dean books. I interviewed Ashiana Dean. That's another 6-hour interview. She is a contactee who was abducted by the Greys in a negative way when she was young, but then eventually was, in essence, rescued by another set of beings. They call themselves the Guardians. Apparently, they are a group of beings that are working on our behalf. That's another key, which is not all the races who say they are working on your behalf actually are. And it is important to understand that it's actually more like a jungle out there, at least that I would liken it to. The multiverse, at least as far as going into 4D, and that's really what we're dealing with. We're entering 4D, and that's why we're dealing with races. It's all about group relations between races. That's what 4D is all about. This is a learning experience. This is what you're here to do. You know, you're here to experience this. It's an amazing thing. Now I have a picture. By the way, that's a blue being. I was telling somebody, yeah, this is from the X-Men, but that's a real, that was pretty accurate. I have seen the blue beings in, the Syrians that were in India. I sort of have an ability to time travel back when I go to certain places like Egypt and India.
They used to live on this planet, Kerry, didn't they?
Sorry?
This blue beings used to live on this planet.
Yes, apparently they did. And I believe around the time of Atlantis, for one. Yes, yeah, the India, in India and their Upanishads and various, they relate about blue beings. But there are also, there's a race of blue ETs that, I forget the witness's name, but he's a disclosure guy, and, he's written several books about these beings that he's in contact with. I've gotten verification from a completely unrelated source on that information, and actually more than one, so that pretty much checks out. They apparently are working on our behalf. And they, I think, are affiliated, I don't know why, but I think they're somehow affiliated with New Zealand and Australia a lot of the time. Quetzalcoatl, this symbolization of the serpents. I just want you to know that archaeologists are completely in the dark as to what the symbols they're looking at really are all about. They're really about Kundalini energy. They're really about the beings that are visiting the planet. We're really talking about an awakening that happens when the Kundalini, the snake of Kundalini, rises through the spine, and the chakras are joined, and basically you go up through the crown chakra and beyond. This is what we're capable of, and I do give lectures all about that awakening.
How do you know when that's happened, Kerry?
Well, it's quite an involved, just one second here. I want to get to this one thing. Yeah, this is a picture of some of the positive, according to Ashana Dean, that the ones that she has encountered as part of the guardian races that are supposedly working on our behalf and throughout history. Now, she's written 2 books. This is a page out of one of her books. They're called the Voyager books. And in my view, they are the most accurate depiction of our history, of the human races here on planet Earth and the various other races we've been dealing with, way better than anything I've ever heard. And that's my opinion. For what it's worth, after 8 years of round-the-clock investigation of this sector, I can simply say that. So now, your question was, how do you activate your Kundalini, etc.? Oh, okay. Well, that's a whole lecture in itself. I have a presentation called Kundalini and Ascension. I guess I don't have that many slides here from it, but I don't have time to give the whole thing. But bottom line is that I did it when I was in around 20, the age of 20. And it's easier to do it when you're really young than when you're older, but you can still do it. And right now, again, the energetics is supporting this. So if you meditate on clearing the chakras. You visualize the chakras as what are called pinwheels. They rotate in I think it's called a clockwise direction. And basically each one is symbolized by a color. There is a primary color grid that you can go on the internet and read about it. There's all kinds of different interpretations. Some people use certain colors, some use others. I tend to use the primary colors. In other words, red for the base chakra, orange, then yellow, then green for the heart chakra, blue for the throat chakra. And we have many more chakras than just the ones I'm going to be telling you here about. You also have, obviously, the third eye, which is usually sort of a purplish color. Violet, and then you have the crown chakra and above, and you also have chakras that go beyond your feet, chakras in your hand, etc. But it is visualizing those colors in their purest form that is a way of activating and clearing your karma and clearing your chakras. And this is all Eastern yogis. This is what they would teach their chelas, and they've written volumes about this process. But in the West, we call it orgone energy. So that's maybe what you would know it better by, rather than Kundalini. I can't tell you why. I simply knew I had to do it when I was in my 20s. So I set about doing it. I actually meditated for every day for a month or so. I got a couple books out. I didn't have anyone guiding me. I simply went through the process, and it worked. And I had multiple what are called samadhi experiences. I actually saw the matrix, that we're in melt away. It was tremendous. And, I can say that I've had multiple samadhi experiences since then as well. It is not, you don't just reach enlightenment and you're done. You may have, samadhi is kind of, it's like bliss, it's a high, but it doesn't last. You know, you can, it can go for a week or maybe even a month, or even just a few days, depends on how intense it is, and then it will start to dissipate. The bottom line is you have to keep doing it and keep, sort of, it's a journey. This is, enlightenment is not a destination, it's a journey. So that's what I can tell you in the shortest amount of time. I mean, I think this journey is a fascinating one, and I don't necessarily think it will become less complex necessarily, but I do believe that there are places where you kind of reach a level with the information and the overload, and then you sort of have to sort of sit with it for a while, and then it sort of resonates and goes through your pores in a sense and washes through you, and then you're clear again, and then you're ready for the next bit and the next bit, and I think that yes, on a certain level, we're becoming very, very knowledgeable as souls, awakened souls here on planet Earth. That awakening is happening. It's quickening because we are here together, starting to spark each other and building as a result. And this is part of, you can think of it as, some people say it's very like a balloon in water. Our consciousness is the balloon, and the balloon can't be kept down. The Illuminati and all these things keep trying to keep the balloon under the water, and it keeps rising, rising, rising. So as we grow and as our consciousness field connects worldwide, and as the conscious awareness grows, I mean, you can watch it happen even on the internet. You can see that people who, used to be deceived by false flags started to investigate, and the investigators are like, hundreds of millions right now, and they're starting to add it up faster and faster. So the downtime between an event and people getting a grip on, the lies being told about it and the truth that is out there to be found, et cetera, et cetera. In other words, it's quickening. And so what I think is that we are one, and that our consciousness is evolving, and or re-evolving back to source. So I wouldn't put a limit on it, but I would say that our ability to handle it is increasing. So I don't think if you're feeling, like it's not an explosion isn't even necessary. I'm not sure that a jump, I mean, we did have a jump in 2012, at the end of 2012. There was a significant sort of a type of a crescendo. It wasn't, nothing major happened that people noticed. A lot of people didn't even notice, but some people did. And it really did change. I've seen people change since then. I know the changes in my own physical body. I know my own physical self. I know I'm changing. I know my ability to deal with all kinds of things has increased, rapidly. So we're getting smarter, faster, better. This is our natural trajectory. The difference between this and us, what I would say, and the secret space program and the Illuminati path is that they want power over, first of all, that's key, okay? And second of all, they want to do it through robotics and through artificial intelligence. That's their path. We may use those tools, but they're not going to use us. That's the difference. We should have a choice. We should be able to claim our own sovereignty, okay? So this is where I have an issue, is where the lack of freedom and the power over, and that's what we're really dealing with. I mean, Satanism is major as well, so don't be deceived about that. In fact, I can tell you that, if you want, there's kind of a slight distinction between the American sort of Nazis and they're British Nazis, of which they are both Nazis, but or fascists or whatever you want to say. I mean, what we're also talking about is an emphasis on Satanism. There is a very strong divide, we were told a long time ago by Dan Birish, in MJ12, between what are called the Satanists and the non-Satanists. And Simon Parks also relates to this. His grandfather was a Satanist, his mother was a non-Satanist. There is a difference and a distinction there to be made. That doesn't mean either side are, good guys, so to speak. But it is interesting because I found that Britain is run by the Satanists. We are run by the Nazis that are not so much Satanists, although that definitely does play a part in America as well. But the Satanism being sold here on a regular basis is unbelievable in terms of your media. And it's just, I mean, it isn't to say Hollywood isn't also doing this, because they definitely are doing it. The music industry. I mean, there are so many sides to this question, but they're basically, Satanism is becoming overt, let's say, here in this country, and it's major. So you're talking about what's called the Luciferian rebellion. That's part of it.
And
Okay.
Satanism is related to Saturn, is it?
This is interesting. I mean, I did ask, for example, Mark Richards about that. He does not seem to see that link up. Either that, or he was being very careful not to relate to that. He also avoided any discussion of the Anunnaki, although he definitely knew what I was talking about. I mean, I'm going to be having a dialogue with him ongoing. I'm actually going to be getting his answers so that he'll write his answers. I've gotten permission to publish his letters. So we'll be able to get more directly from him, which is what I prefer. I'd rather not speak for someone the way I've had to do in this case. But I can tell you that, this is, it's pretty deep in terms of this. So I can't say where it's all going to end up. Luciferian rebellion is basically creating yourself as God, because you decided that you don't need God, that you are God. Now, it's hard to sort of, I know it's hard for people to sort of understand this, but the bottom line is we are God, but we're pieces of God. In other words, every single one of you is a flame of source, assuming you have a human soul. So the difference between the philosophy of a Luciferian and a person who would be considered, a Christian service to others, etc., being such as myself, that I am not the mirror, but the Luciferian rebellion is all about they are the mirror, and the mirror is God, instead of understanding the nature of source. So it's a split, if you will. And it goes quite high, from what I understand, up the chain, in other words, of dimension and density, higher than we realize. It doesn't just stop at 3D and 4D. It goes above that. When ultimately it all becomes one at the highest levels, as you can appreciate, everything being source. But this, what we call Luciferian rebellion, and this sort of seeing the light and what is really light opposed to actually light, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's twisted, but it's a weird circle, and you have to understand. I do encourage people to study the occult, to start to understand, because why not understand these people who thought they were your masters, to understand what your opponents really are up to, how they view you and what they're doing. And it's important to understand the way they think. And I've studied the occult quite a bit, way before I got into Camelot, and it has served me very well. This is a quote from Jay Widener about the archons. They're also talked about, I believe, in the Nakamite texts, as I know them. I can say that this is something of what they look like a bit, but it is an interesting dynamic that's going on here on the planet Earth. This has to do with the original bloodlines that came onto the planet, and the beings that are basically, in a sense, known to be tricksters. There is a certain physicality that goes along with that bloodline.
Are they the same as the Anunnaki, or were they before the Anunnaki?
It's not clear. As much as I've gone down that rabbit hole a long way, it is not clear. From my point of view, this doesn't make me right. I don't think that the Archons and the Anunnaki are the same race of beings, okay? The Anunnaki are the ones at least related to us that wrote those scrolls that Sitchin felt he was in contact with, by the way, that are carved into the temples in Egypt, for example. Those are beings that are around 9 feet tall. Their physicality is very clear. In the case of the ones that are not reptilian, they are humanoid. Okay, they look human like us, but they're much taller. They actually are holding, they're carved showing sometimes holding humans on their laps and so on. The Enki Enlil, Michael Tellinger, Adam's calendar, the evidence that basically Africa was the home of one of the original places where the Anunnaki, that particular branch of being landed and tried to interfere with. They put a frequency fence in all humans that apparently has now gone through this entire race at this time. This is the fence that we're breaking down when we start to activate our junk DNA, by the way. There is evidence to believe that, by the way, Archons, okay, let me just say, that's Anunnaki. Archons, I believe, are finer boned, as you can see this face. There's a woman called Lady Judge. She's a scientist who is very active behind the scenes. She building these nuclear weapons that are running underground bases. They're very small nukes. She owns a corporation. I forget the name of the corporation. I've talked about this with on air, on live streams with Jay Widener and Anthony Sanchez. We've discussed this. They appear to be a finer boned group than the original Anunnaki, just in terms of different races of beings. That doesn't, they both have negative agendas, okay? Although it is said that there are certain groups of the Anunnaki who may not be still on the negative path. It's important to understand that humans, reptilians, all these different races of beings, they're going through changes now as well, okay? So we're not the only ones. In fact, it is interesting to listen to the Simon Parkes interview because he stresses, and it seems to be an emissary from what are called the mantids, what I believe Mark Richards refers to as the trogs, and the reptilians. Simon Parkes says in his interview with me that he's 33%, or 33 and a half, or a quarter, whatever you say, 33% reptilian, 33% human, and 33% mantid. That's what he thinks of himself, which means he's being influenced by each of those bloodlines and those beings that he's in touch with. But he's saying that certain groups of reptilians and certain groups of mantids apparently want to piggyback onto our ascension and the ascension of this Gaia of Earth at this time. That we are moving our frequency as it raises. That's what ascension is about. So as our frequency heightens, we are changing everything around us. This hologram of which we are part, we are changing it. And that is what ultimately becomes ascension. It's not like fairyland. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what is ascension and how will it manifest. It is, I believe we are moving now. We are actually in the process. It is interesting. I mean, we're different. We are all different beings, okay? And we all have different degrees of DNA and different races that we're more sort of aligned with, let's say. So it happens to be that my DNA, whatever, allows me, I actually thrive on this. I can, surmount it with no problem, but that's also because that's how I came in. I can't even explain it completely, but I can tell you that there are some people that are actually, charged up because there is a mission, there is a battle waging, and they want to be part of it, and they can surmount it, and they can transcend it, and they don't find it. I find it energizing. It doesn't bring me down. I know it's strange. I know there are people that find it, they can't handle it, they have to, look, I have fun too, okay, I have, but I actually have kind of a weird sense of humor, and, I enjoy, like sci-fi movies where there's a lot of action, etc. It's just simply my DNA, and I believe that, it's kind of like people that do extreme sports. I'd probably be an extreme sports person if I wasn't doing this. It's just the nature of the way I like to live. Some people need to be more sheltered. It also may have to do with your history and reincarnation, who you were last time, what you dealt with. You may have memories you don't want to revisit. You may find that troublesome and slows you down. Look, all I can tell you is one thing this will do, and what it has to do and what it has done, is it's awakening people. And that's what it's really about. Once you know this information, you can move beyond it. You know, you can work on the most positive ways of creating a future. But ultimately, you cannot forget that we are dealing with an adversary, that there are issues out there, and to pretend otherwise is to be in denial and living a lie, in my view. So, you know, so it's kind of how you want to approach it and what you want to do with this. I mean, no doubt about it. I mean, you know, and Mark Richards says this, you know, lots and lots of the interview, the whistleblowers I deal with are about that as well. But they're still learning, just like we're all learning. You know, we are magicians in training, and I mean that in a good way. We are creators in training. And so that's the bottom line. Yes, we are changing this world, and we will continue to do so. And ultimately, you know, I believe we will be victors. This is why I do what I do. Like this gentleman was saying, first of all, you stand in your light. You also don't give in where you pick your battles, but you decide, you know, what you want to out. When you see an injustice being done, you don't shut up, right? Because if they come for, you know, that person next, then eventually they come for you, right? You know that whole. So these are the things you can do. Speaking out against injustice is very important. You know, you can also bring a group of awareness, you know, do a sort of an awareness group, investigate the truth. You can also, you know, be an organic gardener. I mean, you know, that becomes a rebellious act when they don't want you to have seeds, you know, that aren't GMO. It's crazy, but there are so many rebellious acts, you almost don't have to leave your house without knowing you're going to be breaking some law. So I think standing in your light and moving forward in what you believe in, you know, when the traffic light says stop and you decide to go because it's safer to go or because you might save a life in doing so. In other words, you have to make an executive decision in that moment. You know, buying something that apricot kernels. You can actually buy apricot kernels in a health food store. That cures cancer. Go buy them. You know, I mean, that's a rebellious act. You know, these are the things you can do. But there, you know, there's more. And obviously, the other thing is the whistleblowers in your families. Lots of you people have people in your histories, grandfathers, grandmothers, who have witnessed the truth about what's really going on here on the planet. If you can get them to testify in some form or fashion, even without releasing their name, you know, this can actually help support the people that are out there saying they're being targeted by electronics, where people think they're crazy. Do you know, I was told by a friend of mine that it's illegal here in the UK to say you believe in UFOs. That you can actually be arrested and put in what they call sectioned or something like that. That there's actually a law out there. I mean, you know, this is, I don't know if this is true. This is what the kind of things I'm told. I mean, you know, this is crazy. You know, see, this is what we're dealing with. I can tell you, and I didn't play it today. I didn't have time really. I have an audio that basically, you know, talks about the fact that there's actually a law in America, and I think it's here too now, that we're not supposed to be allowed to talk to ETs. That it's actually, you know, a federal offense, and you can be thrown in jail. But you see, now think about the dichotomy of that. They can't say it's a law not to talk to ETs, and then at the same time say that they don't exist. How can the two live side by side?
It is against the law to say you can cure cancer.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right.
Cameron come on telly the other week. He wants everybody in this country to give their DNA over for cancer research. What a load of crap.
Yes.
Right? But a week before that, Brussels announced through the BBC that they're going to spend 123 billion euros on neuroscience out of control of the human mind in Switzerland.
Right. What does that tell you about the human, though? If they have to spend that much money to figure out how to control you at this late date, I thought they had it down. Wow. We are so uncontrollable. That is like good news. So, okay, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah, right. Okay, thank you.
Gold chain round your neck, nothing to me. Diamonds in your teeth, nothing to me. You could be rolling 22s, nothing to me. Down with the truth, now that's something to me. Gold chain round your neck, nothing to me. Diamonds in your teeth, nothing to me. You could be rolling 22s, nothing to me. Down with the truth, now that's something to me. I'm not here to follow false idols. This is my lane, so it's my recital. I'm giving you straight truth, not the Bible. I stand here alone, that's the first truth, it's vital. My other side's in peace, a bitch, it's spiteful, female, feminine, delightful.